Late this afternoon, President Obama ordered a waiver of restrictions on military arms and support for foreign fighters. Obama will allow this under the guise of fighting terrorism and national security interests for the United States. This means weaponry from the United States will be sold to rebels, managed and facilitated by the State Department. For more on this, let's turn to former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. Michael, nice to have you on. This is a big move by the president tonight, probably one of the biggest commitments so far the United States has made in Syria. How do you read it tonight?
Well, I read it as a very alarming and escalatory move on his part. This could, by granting this waiver, it allows man-portable air defense systems to go to the rebels immediately, people that we cannot even identify. And, of course, they're all aimed at trying to topple the government of Bashar al-Assad of Syria. Also, if it's an air defense systems that are going to be going, they could be aimed directly at Russian and Syrian aircraft. This is a very serious development. Now, under the waiver, they're supposed to notify Congress in 15 days, for 15 days, but Congress is going out of session tonight. And so these weapons will just go from stockpiles that already exist in Europe and be in the hands of rebels within days. And this is a very, very serious development.
All right. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Russian and American military experts will discuss pulling militants out of Aleppo at a meeting in Geneva this Saturday.
We've reached an agreement to meet on Saturday in Geneva. Our military experts will meet to finalize sporadic work on a document to solve eastern Aleppo's situation by pulling out all the militants from there and by helping civilians who want to leave the city.
Lavrov and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry have been discussing Syria on the sidelines of the European Security Conference in Hamburg, Germany. So, Michael, here we have a hard time identifying who these arms are going to go to, number one. And number two, you've got John Kerry supposedly trying to find the peace while the United States is being an arms dealer right into the city of Aleppo. How do we read that? Well,
in addition to all of that, I mean, it's a disaster. Also these rebels have already informed us that they're not going to leave. They intend to stay there, hold their ground, and if they now know that they're going to be getting these weapons, then this just changes the entire military equation in that region. And this is a real escalation of the civil war.
What do you think the Russian response is going to be, the Syrian response is going to be?
Oh, I think they're going to, I hope that they have defenses against these manpads, because this thing could easily escalate into a very all-out war. And it's another example of the U.S. fighting a proxy war, and in this case, it's going to be against Russia, and it's going to create even greater havoc in a very short time.
And finally, and I don't know if you've got this answer, or anybody for that matter, except the two men that met, and that's Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Would Trump in transition know that the president was going to do this?
Probably not. This is I don't think anybody was aware that this was going to be happening, and the element of surprise is clearly from Obama's standpoint is necessary in order to be able to act on this very rapidly without any kind of argument or dissension from anybody, certainly not from Congress. And and the Congress actually authorized manpads, by the way, for the Syrian conflict to these rebels that we cannot identify. This is a very serious development tonight.
All right, Michael Maloof, good to have you on tonight. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Good evening, friends. We start tonight with the latest developments in Syria. President Obama signed a waiver on Thursday lifting restrictions of weapon supplies to rebel groups in that country. It's not the first time he's done so, but the timing has become a hot topic for debate. He made the decision in his last month of his presidency, and it comes as rebels retreat from East Aleppo. RT's Alexei Yaroshavsky reports tonight.
With just a little over a month remaining until President Obama leaves the White House, on Thursday he signed a very peculiar new decree regarding the Syrian rebels. Basically, he waived any restrictions on arms supplies to the Syrian rebels, delegating responsibilities to the U.S. Secretary of State to report to Congress on weapons export proposals, requiring 15 days before those are authorized.
I hereby determine that the transaction encompassing the provision of defence articles and services to foreign forces, irregular forces, groups or individuals engaged in supporting or facilitating ongoing US military operations to counter terrorism in Syria is essential to the national security interests of the United States.
This is not the first time the president has signed such waiver. Back in 2013, he signed a similar document providing military aid to selected vetted members of the Syrian opposition. This time, however, his new decree seems to have a much less narrow scope than before. Back in 2015, he also included $500 million into the defense budget for training the opposition rebels in Syria. This did not really go well. The Pentagon has admitted that this plan did not work out, and only a handful of fighters were eventually trained. Another aspect of this new decree which raised a lot of eyebrows is the timing of it. It happens amid the operation in eastern Aleppo, and it seems that the rebels are fleeing that part of the city, and Moscow has already reacted to the latest decision by Obama, with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov expressing concerns that these weapons, which may be shipped to the rebels in Syria, may end up in the hands of the terrorists, which is exactly the opposite of what Obama is trying to achieve, at least that's what he's been saying, by sending those weapons to the Syrian rebels. Also, we spoke to the former Pentagon analyst Michael Malouf, who told us that the already difficult situation in Syria may be even more escalated following this decision.
These rebels have already informed us that they're not going to leave. They intend to stay there, hold their ground, and if they now know that they're going to be getting these weapons, then this just changes the entire military equation in that region. And this is a real escalation of the civil war. This thing could easily escalate into a very all-out war, and it's another example of the U.S. fighting a proxy war, and in this case, it's going to be against Russia, and it's going to create even greater havoc in a very short time.
And the latest Obama's decision to waive restrictions on supplying Syrian rebels with arms would definitely not go down well with the President-elect Trump, who has never made his feelings secret towards supplying the Syrian rebels with weaponry.
Russia is hitting, the groups that we're backing.
Sure. And why are we backing the group? We don't even know who those people are. I speak to generals. They're saying we're giving billions of dollars of equipment to people we have no... Here we go again. We're giving all of this money and all of this equipment to people we have no idea who they are. They're probably worse than Assad. I mean, Assad's no baby. He's not good. But who are the people that we're backing?
Alexei Rashevsky, RT, reporting from outside the White House in Washington, D.C.